this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and today I'm going to be looking at a game from the recent Super Tournament in Dortmund, Germany, Dortmund 2011, and it's a round 4 game between Hikaru Nakamura of the US and Vladimir Kramnik of Russia. So these guys always tend to have exciting games, and this one definitely went Kramnik's way with a positional technical endgame. So Nakamura starts with d4, and he's really capable of playing anything, so it's probably pretty tough to prepare against. And so with knight f6 and e6, Kramnik is signaling that he wants to play the Nimzo-Indian involving bishop to b4, although a transposition would have been possible here with d5 into a Slav type of structure, or possibly even c5 trying to go into the Benoni, although you wouldn't really expect that from Kramnik. So he played bishop b4, so just standard Nimzo-Indian move order, and knight f3 and c5. So c5 is just trying to really start challenging the center immediately, and after g3 this is going to lead to some complications. So pawn takes, and this variation has been around for a while, and so now bishop g2 and queen to b3 by Nakamura. And so the idea is really that white wants to put some pressure on that dark squared bishop on b4, and he's hoping that his weakness in pawn structure will be compensated by the fact that the position will be open and his two bishops will have good space to maneuver. So after pawn takes and now b takes c3, so Kramnik plays knight c6 here, and so he's really getting some fluid development. And yes, he did give up his dark squared bishop, but he's completed his development, and he's got good control of his center, and white's pieces are somewhat discoordinated right now. So it's a pretty dynamic position, and after c takes d5, Kramnik does a nice intermediate move, because if he just plays, for example, knight takes here, then this is probably going to favor white, because he's going to be able to play c4, kicking the knight on d5, and the position's really going to be open for both of his bishops. So that's not going to work too well. And if pawn takes, maybe a similar idea. White could play something like this, and again, I would probably prefer white here, because after c4, his dark square bishop is going to open up, and he's going to have some targets to attack in the center on c6 and d5. So that's why Kramnik played knight a5, because he wanted to. He didn't want to let white trade off his knight and change the pawn structure. So knight a5 forces the queen to retreat, and now knight takes d5. So black has played the opening a little bit interestingly, but as we can see after queen c7, he's got excellent pressure and excellent control of the half-open c-file. And so now rook e1, I didn't really like the move, but it's a little bit difficult to suggest something else, because it's just kind of a weird position. So maybe e4 directly was a better try, although it seems to result in something maybe a little bit similar. But here, now to be noted, Nakamura is indirectly defending the c3 pawn, because any attempt to win it will just run into bishop d2, and white's going to pick off one of those, the knight on a5. It's not going to quite work. So after bishop d7, now Kramnik is maybe starting to think about putting the bishop to target that queen on c2, and now e4, and the same tactic works for white. Black can't take the pawn because of bishop d2, and after rook c1, there's just no way to hold on to the piece for black, so he's going to drop a piece there. So he plays knight to b6, which is kind of where the knight wanted to go anyway, to be honest, because now the knight has a lot of control over the c4 square for black, and he can also bring the bishop to a4, which is really annoying for white, because he's got to find a better square for his queen, and he can't develop a rook to d1. So it's really going to break up his coordination, his position. And so now e5, so white has reopened the bishop on g2 in the diagonal, but white's problem in this position is that he can't really, he doesn't have a good square for the dark squared bishop to develop, because black controls the c4 square so well with his knights. So bishop to a4, getting a little more space. And now Kramnik says queen to c4, and he's definitely ready to take it into an endgame, because if takes, for example, knight takes to hold the pawn. Now, this endgame is completely miserable for white. Even though he has the two bishops, the dark square bishop doesn't have a good square. And something like bishop to g5, I mean, there's just no good squares for it. So going back to the game continuation, after queen c4, Nakamura played queen to f3. So he's trying to, he's just trying to hold on here. Black is really taking over the queen side, and white doesn't really have much to show for it at all, except a bad bishop on c1. So knight to c6, Kramnik decides it's time to reroute the knight to the center and put a little bit of pressure on white immediately. Also possible was rook to c8 here. Although I believe white's idea was pretty simple. He just wanted to play bishop here and try any way he could to deflect black's attack on the queen side. So instead, Kramnik played knight c6, which is a much more forcing move immediately, because it's threatening to take the knight on d4, and it's also putting a little pressure on the pawn on e5. So Nakamura thought for just over an hour on rook e4, so he was clearly out of his preparation here, and his position is already very difficult. Here, it's very tough to recommend another move for white, because black's plan is extremely simple. If you play knight takes c6, bishop takes, and after trading the light squared bishops, black is going to have a very clear edge in the endgame as a result of white's shattered pawn structure and bad dark squared bishop. So that's essentially kind of what happened anyway, but rook e4, I guess Nakamura was hoping to maybe complicate things a little bit on the king side. But Kramnik played very simple. He played knight takes d4, rook takes, and now just bishop c6. So this intermediate move forces a very inferior endgame for black, or for white, rather, and I don't really see any way out. Maybe he could try... It's pretty tough. I mean, this is definitely not easy, but maybe white could have tried queen to e3, but this is going to be very difficult. This is not going to be a fun game to play, because, again, the good knight, bad bishop, and bad pawn structure for white spells probably a lost endgame. So bishop c6, Nakamura took, and he's already getting a little low on time, around 15 minutes. So here, it looks like white might have some chances to hold because of his rook and his activity with the rook on the 7th rank. However, this turns out to be superficial, as his lack of coordination, it doesn't allow him to back that rook up. His rook on a1's out of the game. So Kramnik plays simple and exchanges the active rook by white. And now h5. Nice move, making looped for the king and also getting ready to access the center. Also trying to fix white's pawns on dark squares so that they're stuck in the same colors as bishop. Bishop to e3, and now knight d5. So here I thought Nakamura maybe had a chance to try to take things into a worse endgame, but possible to hold if he could liquidate some of these pawns. So maybe bishop takes a7, and I don't really see anything better for black. Maybe Kramnik had something else in mind, but I think just rook takes, and now rook to a3. So black's going to win the pawn back, and he's going to have a sizable advantage due to a bad bishop versus a good knight, and the pawns are on the same color of the board, or the same side of the board. Black's probably going to be able to march up, win that e5 pawn. He's probably going to win that endgame anyway, but I thought maybe Nakamura can try liquidating the queenside pawns, but instead he played bishop d4, and now this bishop is essentially a big pawn after b6. So f4, and now you can see all of white's pawns are pretty much on dark squares, and he's got a horrible bishop on d4. Black is going to simply activate his rook. Maybe white could have tried rook to a3. That was definitely an idea, but probably nothing to do here. So just forced to defend passively is white here, and Kramnik just grinds. So you want to pay attention how patient he plays the end game, kind of shoring everything up, then activating his king. And now the tactics are just going to come in always to black's favor because he's got such an advantage with his centralized knight on d5. So check, pushing the king back, but again, the activity is superficial for white here. So now another tactic with c2, as black had put a little pressure on the bishop on d4. So king takes c2 is impossible. And if rook takes c2, simply knight takes f4 as well. So now after push, and this is a good thing to note, Kramnik doesn't take the pawn because he doesn't want to allow a bunch of checks to his king. So he just plays king g5, knowing that the g4 pawn is going to remain weak, and he'll probably win that as well. So bishop b2, and now, well, black is up 2 pawns here, and his pieces are a little bit tied up on the queen side, but definitely not enough to stop the win. So after king takes g4, pawn takes, and in this position, Nakamura just resigned because he realized there's nothing he can do. He's got no counterplay, and black is just going to simply march his pawn down the board. If maybe white tries check, it seems like it's going to be a pretty easy win for black, just marching this pawn as, he's going to win the e-pawn and no chance at all for white. So after f takes e6, Nakamura resigned because Kramnik just, he was too good in this game. His preparation was too thorough, and Nakamura's preparation was not very thorough at all, as he achieved a clearly worse position after, I believe, 17 moves. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.